Hi, welcome. Enjoy the content, subscribe, and turn on notifications.
Eleanor stared at her phone like it was a death sentence. The screen lit up her pale face while her eyes went over Patrick's message for the 10th time. Tomorrow. No excuses. Or I'll tell your husband everything. Her stomach churned. She'd been living with this fear for weeks, ever since Patrick, the man she'd cheated on Nathan with, started extorting her. At first, she thought that affair was just a moment of weakness she could bury in the past, something no one would ever find out. But Patrick wouldn't let her forget. He first approached her with kind words. "Eleanor, I don't want to cause you any trouble, but I could use a small financial favor." It seemed harmless at the time. She hesitated but gave in. The guilt was already crushing her. If a few dollars could keep her secret safe, so be it. But that wasn't the end. It was the beginning. Patrick realized he had power over her. Soon, the messages became more demanding. The amounts got bigger. And Eleanor understood that no matter how much she paid, he'd never be satisfied. Now he wanted even more money and sent her direct threats. "Nathan's a nice guy, right? It'd be a shame if he found out the worst way possible." The terror of losing her marriage and being publicly humiliated consumed her. Every day felt like a struggle to hide her anxiety, to pretend nothing was wrong. But inside, she was falling apart. Meeting him to hand over the money was torture. Eleanor had to make up excuses for Nathan, claiming she had obligations or needed some time alone. One night, she said she was going to see a friend. Another time, she pretended she was visiting her sister. In reality, she drove to out-of-the-way places, where Patrick waited. He always greeted her with the same satisfied grin, the look of someone who enjoyed seeing her unravel. The last time they met, it was in a poorly lit parking lot. Eleanor got out of her car, clutching an envelope in trembling hands. Patrick took the money and counted it slowly, savoring each bill, as if testing her patience. "This'll do for now," he said, folding the envelope and stuffing it into his coat pocket. "But I think we'll need to see each other again. Very soon." Eleanor felt a bitter taste in her mouth. She wanted to scream, to say she couldn't take it anymore. But she was cornered. If she said no, she'd lose everything. If she kept giving in, she'd never have peace. That night, when she got home, Nathan greeted her with a warm look. He was holding a glass of wine and smiled. "I figured you could use a little relaxation." Eleanor's heart clenched. How could he still be so good to her? How could he look at her with that same loving gaze, not knowing the betrayal she was hiding? "Thank you," she murmured, taking the glass. But her hand was shaking. Nathan noticed. "Are you okay?" She forced a smile. "Yeah, just a little tired." He watched her a second longer than usual but didn't push it. Eleanor took a deep breath and sipped the wine, trying to push away her thoughts. Deep down, though, she knew she was living in a house of cards about to collapse. And when it did, there'd be no way to rebuild it. Eleanor didn't sleep that night. She stayed up in bed, staring into the darkness, listening to Nathan's steady breathing next to her. Every time he stirred, her heart raced, afraid he might wake up and sense what was happening inside her. But he didn't wake. He stayed there, peaceful, unaware that his wife was hiding a devastating secret. She wanted to cry, scream, disappear. But she knew none of that would fix anything. Patrick wasn't going to stop. It didn't matter how much money she gave him, he'd always come back for more. It was an endless game. She was trapped with no way out. And the only way to escape was to go through hell. When the first rays of sunlight came through the window, Eleanor made a decision. Her chest felt heavy, her hands were cold, but she had no choice left. If she kept running, Patrick would destroy her slowly. If she wanted a shot at freedom, she'd have to face the worst pain of all. She looked at Nathan, still asleep. She knew that the moment he heard the truth, everything would change. The way he looked at her, touched her, smiled at her without reservation, all of that could vanish in a heartbeat. But she had nowhere left to run. She waited until he woke naturally. Nathan opened his eyes slowly, blinking at the morning light. He smiled, but the look on Eleanor's face made it vanish instantly. "What's wrong?" His voice was still rough with sleep, but it was filled with genuine concern. Eleanor tried to speak, but her throat felt closed up. She swallowed hard and took a deep breath, trying to find the strength to say the words that tasted like poison. "I need to tell you something." Nathan sat up in bed, his brow furrowing. He didn't ask any questions. He just waited. So she told him everything. Each word felt like stabbing her own heart. She told him she'd made a mistake, that she gave in to temptation and betrayed his trust. That she thought she could bury the past and move on, but Patrick wouldn't let her. She told him about the threats, the money, her terror of losing everything. Nathan didn't interrupt. He just listened, his face expressionless. When Eleanor finished, the silence took over the room. A brutal, suffocating silence. "He's blackmailing you?" Nathan's voice finally broke the stillness, and there was no anger in it, just a cold edge. Eleanor nodded, her eyes stinging with tears. "Why didn't you tell me before?" She tried to answer, but the words died in her throat. How could she explain? How could she tell him that her fear of losing him was what kept her from telling him? That ironically, by trying to protect him, she ended up exactly where she feared most, on the brink of ruin? Nathan stayed silent for a long time. Eleanor wished he'd say something, anything. Shout, fight, ask her what she was thinking. But he just got up, grabbed his phone from the nightstand, and started scrolling through it. "What are you doing?" Her voice sounded weak. "Send me everything. Messages, receipts. I want to see it all." Eleanor's heart pounded. Nathan wasn't freaking out. He wasn't yelling. He was cold, calculating. It was worse than any outburst of anger. She grabbed her phone with trembling hands and forwarded everything to him. Nathan read every one of Patrick's messages with terrifying calm. When he was done, he locked the screen and looked at her. "We're ending this." A shiver ran through Eleanor. "What? You've given that jerk enough money. It stops now." Nathan left the room without another word. Eleanor stood there, feeling her world crumble around her. She knew the storm was coming, and there was no more running from it. Eleanor went downstairs with her heart pounding, each step unsteady, like she was heading into an unknown abyss. Nathan was in the living room, standing with his back to her, phone still in hand. His silence was worse than any fight. She approached slowly, overwhelmed by uncertainty. "Nathan, what are you going to do?" He turned on his heels, his eyes cold as ice. There was tension in his stance, absolute control over his emotions, but Eleanor knew he was furious inside. "We're going to put an end to this," he said, raising his phone to show Patrick's messages. "He thinks he can blackmail you for the rest of your life? Rip us off, destroy our marriage, and walk away without consequences?" His voice grew sharper with each word. This wasn't a betrayed man speaking. This was a man who had made up his mind. "I can't handle this alone anymore," Eleanor admitted in a near whisper. Nathan nodded slowly, as if he'd been waiting for that confession. "Then let me handle it." She didn't dare ask what he really meant by that. Nathan spent the day making phone calls. Eleanor watched from a distance, too afraid to interfere. He talked to someone, took notes, analyzed everything with a calmness that unnerved her. When night fell, he called her over. "Tomorrow you're going to set up a meeting with him." Eleanor's stomach lurched. "What? He wants money, right? Then we'll give him what he wants." There was something in Nathan's tone that made her uneasy. He didn't sound like someone about to cave in. He sounded like someone about to strike. Eleanor hesitated, but she knew there was no way out. She grabbed her phone and typed the message with shaking fingers. "Patrick, I have the money you asked for. Tomorrow night, same place." He replied quickly. "Great. Don't keep me waiting." She turned off the screen, feeling like she couldn't breathe. Nathan took an envelope out of the drawer and tossed it on the table. "Tomorrow, you give him that." Eleanor opened the envelope. It was full of bills. She looked at Nathan, wide-eyed. "Nathan, I've already notified the police. The minute he takes this money, it's over." She stayed quiet. He really had thought of everything. But for some reason, that didn't make her feel any safer. The next day was torture. Eleanor couldn't focus on anything. Every minute that ticked by brought her closer to that meeting. Patrick didn't know what was coming, and she tried to convince herself it was the only way out. When night came, Eleanor drove to the parking lot where they always met. Her hands were sweaty on the steering wheel. She parked, turned off the engine, and just sat there, trying to ignore the panic welling up in her chest. Patrick arrived a few minutes later. He got out of his car like a king collecting taxes from a subject. There was arrogance in his stride, a smug grin on his lips. Eleanor felt disgusted. "Good girl," he said, holding out his hand. "Now give me what I want." She swallowed hard and handed him the envelope. Patrick opened it, looked through the bills, and let out a pleased chuckle. "See? When you cooperate, things go smoother." But then, before he could pocket the money, a car screeched to a stop behind him. Doors flew open. Commanding voices echoed through the parking lot. "Hands up." Patrick's smug grin vanished instantly. "What?" He looked at Eleanor, and in that split second, she saw the terror in his eyes. For the first time, he was in her position. Patrick tried to run, but he was taken down within seconds. They cuffed his wrists, and all he could do was shout insults as they hauled him away. Eleanor didn't move. She just watched, feeling a strange mix of relief and emptiness. Nathan walked up beside her. "It's over." But she knew it was only the beginning. Eleanor's legs felt weak as she watched them shove Patrick into the police car. The red and blue lights flashed against the windows, a silent warning that her life would never be the same. She heard the dull thud of the door shutting him in, then the car pulled away, taking the threat of blackmail away with it. Yet she didn't feel relieved. She'd hoped that the moment Patrick was arrested, everything would be solved. That the weight on her chest would lift. That she could finally breathe and feel free. But it didn't happen. In fact, it was the opposite. There was a cold silence between her and Nathan, so sharp it was almost unbearable. He didn't look at her, didn't celebrate, didn't seem the least bit pleased. He just kept that distant, unemotional expression, like this whole operation had been nothing more than a task he needed to finish. Eleanor opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. Nathan, however, seemed to have decided there was nothing more to say. Without waiting for her, he turned and walked back to his car. Eleanor followed, unsure of what to do. He opened the door, and she grabbed his arm. "Nathan," he paused for a moment, still not facing her. Then he exhaled heavily and finally turned around. His eyes held something she couldn't completely identify. It wasn't anger. It wasn't disgust. It was something worse. Indifference. "You're free now, Eleanor. You don't have to worry about Patrick anymore." The way he said it made her stomach twist. It wasn't just a statement about Patrick being in jail, it was a warning. She felt a knot in her throat. "What do you mean by that?" Nathan ran a hand over his face, as though trying to find patience. When he spoke again, his voice was low and flat. "I did what needed to be done. The rest is up to you. Up to me? She frowned, confused. I don't understand. He looked straight into her eyes, and this time there was something there. Something broken. Do you really think this is only about Patrick? It felt like something inside her shattered. Because deep down, she already knew the answer. But she didn't want to admit it. Eleanor had always been scared of losing Nathan because of the blackmail, the public shame, the scandal. But now she realized the real danger was never Patrick. The real danger was what would happen afterward. When it was all over. When there was no external villain to blame. Now there was no more blackmail. No more threats. Only the harsh reality of her own mistakes. Nathan stayed quiet for a moment, like he was waiting for her to say something. But Eleanor couldn't speak. He got in his car, shut the door, and started the engine. She took a step back, a terrible emptiness washing over her. Nathan rolled the window down and looked at her one last time. Don't wait up. Then he was gone. She stood there, watching his taillights fade into the night, realizing that even though Patrick was in jail and it seemed like everything was solved, she had just lost something far bigger. Something she might never get back. Eleanor stayed up all night. The clock by the bed showed 3 in the morning, then 4, then 5. The silence in the house felt louder than ever. She didn't hear any footsteps in the hallway or Nathan's keys in the door. Only a crushing emptiness. She sat up in bed, hugging her knees, her breath coming in short, uneven bursts. With every minute that passed, the truth became clearer: Nathan wasn't coming back. For the first time, Eleanor felt like the house was unfamiliar. As if it was no longer hers. Every piece of furniture, every photo on the wall, every memory scattered around, it all seemed ready to crumble. The weight of her betrayal had never felt so suffocating. For weeks, she'd lived in fear of being exposed. Then she was terrified Patrick would ruin her life. Now the fear was something else entirely. It was quiet, whispering that she'd already lost everything. She got out of bed, walking barefoot through the dark house. She ran her hand along the dining table, over the back of the chair where Nathan used to sit. She looked at the couch where they'd watched countless movies together, laughing and talking about random things. Now it felt like a world away. Morning came. Sunlight slipped through the living room curtains just as she finally heard a noise at the door. Her heart jumped. Nathan. She rushed to the door, paused for a second to catch her breath, and opened it. But the look on his face felt like a punch to the gut. There was no anger. No hatred. But no love, either. There was only an empty stare. Nathan walked in, passing by her without a word, and headed straight to the bedroom. Eleanor followed him, trying to hold back the panic twisting inside her. He opened the closet and started pulling out clothes, folding them carefully and placing them into a suitcase. Eleanor couldn't breathe. What are you doing? Nathan kept folding a shirt without looking at her. What do you think? Nathan, no. She tried to grab his arm, but he pulled away. Not aggressively, but firmly. A chill ran down her spine. You can't just leave. We went through this together. He paused for a moment and finally looked at her. Did we? The question hung in the air, stinging. Eleanor tried to speak, but no words came. Nathan sighed and kept packing. I did what needed to be done. Not for you. For me. Because I wasn't going to let a scumbag like Patrick destroy you. He closed the suitcase. But that doesn't mean I can stay with you like nothing happened. That hit harder than anything else he could have said. Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. I know I messed up, but I love you, Nathan. Doesn't that count for anything? Nathan took a deep breath. For a second, she thought he might waver. But then he gave a sad smile. If it did, I'd be angry right now. I'd be yelling, fighting, trying to save us. He ran a hand through his hair, looking away. But I don't feel anything anymore, Eleanor. That was worse than anything else. He zipped up the suitcase and walked to the door. Eleanor trailed after him, desperate. Nathan, please, he stopped, hand on the doorknob, but didn't turn around. I forgive you. But that doesn't mean I want to keep going. Then he walked out. Eleanor stood there, her hands shaking, staring at the closed door. For the first time, she realized her real punishment wasn't public disgrace. It wasn't Patrick going to jail. It was Nathan's absence. And there was nothing she could do to change that. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss any updates. See you next time.